the Chris Tucker that we got now is Epstein Island Chris Tucker, not Smokey.
Oh, Lord.
They called Katt Williams crazy. They called him bitter. They said he needed to sit down and shut up. And then, 3 million government documents dropped. And suddenly, nobody's laughing at Katt Williams anymore. Fast forward to January 2026, the DOJ releases the full Epstein files, real names, real documents, real connections. And the same celebrities who groaned at Ricky Gervais's joke, they disappeared off social media overnight. So today, we're going line by line through exactly what he said, exactly what Gervais exposed, and exactly what these newly released files confirm, because this isn't a conspiracy theory anymore. Now let's rewind for a second, because if the only place you know Katt Williams from is his wild stand-up specials or his hilarious moments in the movie Friday After Next, then trust me, you're only seeing a tiny slice of the story. Katt Williams isn't just a comedian who walks on stage and makes people laugh until their stomach hurts. For years, he's been one of the loudest voices talking about the behind-the-scenes reality of Hollywood. Long before social media loved exposing celebrity drama, long before trending hashtags, Katt was already saying that the entertainment industry had some very questionable things happening behind the curtain. And back then, a lot of people brushed him off. They called him crazy. They said he was just bitter. Some even claimed he was upset about his career. But here's the interesting part about Katt Williams. He never backed down, not once. While everyone else moved on, Katt kept talking and kept pointing at the same issues. And slowly, something strange started happening. The more time passed, the more some of the things he said started lining up with reality. Then came the moment that flipped the entire conversation upside down. His now legendary interview with Shannon Sharpe on the podcast Club Shay Shay. That interview didn't just go viral, it exploded. We're talking over 40 million views and more than 1 million likes on YouTube. Those aren't normal internet numbers. That's the kind of attention where the entire internet stops scrolling and starts listening. And during that interview, Katt didn't whisper, he went full volume. He openly talked about some of the biggest names in comedy, including Kevin Hart, Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, and Ricky Smiley. But it wasn't just casual celebrity gossip. Katt started explaining how the industry really works behind closed doors. According to him, certain careers don't just happen. He suggested that some entertainers are carefully placed into the spotlight, chosen through networks and connections that the public never even sees. Now here's where things get really interesting. After the interview blew up online, the people he mentioned definitely responded, but not in the way many expected. Instead of clearly saying that's not true, most of them simply brushed it off, calling Katt bitter or angry. But nobody directly said the claims were false. And if you think about it, that silence raises eyebrows, because when someone accuses you of something you didn't do, the first instinct is usually to say, "Hold on, that's completely wrong." But when the response is mostly silence, it makes people start asking questions. And that's exactly why Katt's words began hitting even harder in 2025 and 2026. Because little by little, the receipts started showing up. Big ones, ones that were very difficult to ignore. Now let's shift gears and talk about Ricky Gervais, the man who didn't whisper, he shouted the truth in front of Hollywood. Because before Katt Williams' words went viral, there was another comedian who walked into the lion's den and threw a bomb no one was ready for. January 5th, 2020, the 77th Annual Golden Globe Awards, Beverly Hilton Hotel. Picture it, a room packed with A-list celebrities, studio executives, network bigwigs, all dressed in designer suits, champagne in hand, ready for the usual night of polite applause and back-patting. And then, Ricky Gervais opens his mouth. Within seconds, the comfortable glow of the room turns tense. He tears into Hollywood's hypocrisy with surgical precision. He jokes about celebrities preaching morality while profiting from companies with questionable practices. He calls out Felicity Huffman's prison sentence. He pokes fun at Leonardo DiCaprio's dating habits. And then he hits the crown jewel of his roasting spree. Spoiler alert, in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. The cameras catch it all. A groan spreads through the crowd. Celebrities avoid eye contact, shuffle awkwardly.
Even Tom Hanks, Hollywood's golden dad, looks genuinely horrified. And Gervais, unfazed, he stares right at the room and says something that hits harder than any mic drop. "Shut up. I know he's your friend, but I don't care." He didn't say reported ties or alleged connection. He said, "your friend," to a room full of the most powerful people in Hollywood. And not a single laugh, just groans. Because jokes like that only land when there's a kernel of truth buried inside. That night wasn't just comedy, it was a warning. Ricky was saying, "I see you, we all see you, and one day the receipts will surface." Fast forward to November 2025, and things take a dramatic turn. Congress passes the Epstein Files Transparency Act with support from both parties, and President Trump signs it into law. This wasn't a minor move. This was the government officially saying, enough is enough. Years of pressure from survivors, journalists, and the public finally forced the DOJ to open its doors and release the full story. Then, on January 30th, 2026, the DOJ dropped a bomb that the world wasn't ready for. Over 3 million pages of documents, not summaries, not highlights, 3 million pages, plus thousands of videos and hundreds of thousands of images, all tied to the investigations and prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. The internet exploded. Journalists, researchers, even regular people with computers were diving in day and night. And what they uncovered? Mind-blowing. The files contained emails, phone records, flight logs, photographs, and tips submitted to the FBI. Names that had been whispered about for years suddenly appeared in black and white, official government documents. Politicians, business moguls, celebrities, people the public thought were untouchable. Then came the 6-page DOJ letter to Congress, a legal requirement listing what they called politically exposed persons. These were prominent figures appearing in the files, no matter what the context. Presidents, corporate leaders, government officials, and some of Hollywood's biggest names.
Now here's the critical detail. Appearing in the files does not automatically mean someone committed a crime. Some names popped up in passing emails. Others were included in tips that were never verified. Some were just in a phone directory Epstein and Maxwell kept of everyone they met. But here's the takeaway. The sheer volume of powerful people connected to Epstein's world made one thing crystal clear. This wasn't a lone villain operating in secret. This was a network that reached some of the wealthiest, most famous, and influential people on Earth. And the consequences? They started arriving in early 2026. Criminal investigations were launched. A former Norwegian prime minister was charged with aggravated corruption. Prince Andrew was arrested. British politician Peter Mandelson was under investigation. Real arrests, real charges, real consequences. And Hollywood? Mostly silence. After years of celebrities posting about justice, activism, and speaking up, that silence was deafening. Now here's the moment where Katt Williams stops being just the comedian with a big mouth and starts looking like a strategist who saw the whole board before the game even began. Once the Epstein files started dropping, something interesting happened. People went back to his old interviews, the legendary Club Shay Shay podcast, his other podcast appearances, even his stand-up specials, and realized something wild. A lot of what he had been saying for years suddenly made perfect sense. Katt had been talking about this long before anyone else noticed. He argued that throughout history, powerful people have built systems that let them operate completely outside normal scrutiny. He called it networks, he called it influence, and he explained how certain Hollywood careers aren't just about talent or hard work, they're about being placed in positions through systems most people don't even see. He described it as a chessboard. Some people are kings, moving freely and protected by the setup of the board. Others are pawns, barely aware they're even part of the game until it's far too late. Then the Epstein files dropped, and suddenly that chessboard looked real. Flight logs, guest lists, emails between Epstein and executives, contact lists that included world leaders, celebrities, and industry moguls. The board wasn't just theory, it was documented, black and white, undeniable. Katt even made explosive claims about certain high-profile visitors to Epstein's private island, including fellow comedian Chris Tucker, claims Tucker has never meaningfully responded to. True or not, the silence surrounding these names, that speaks volumes. But Katt didn't stop there. He suggested the FBI and other agencies had known about Epstein's activities for years, and according to him, it wasn't incompetence that let it continue, it was strategy. These names weren't being collected for arrests, they were being kept as leverage, political leverage, the kind of leverage that lets some of the most powerful people in the world control other powerful people. And now that the files are public, all that leverage is gone. The game is exposed, and the people who thought they were untouchable, suddenly, very, very nervous. Now let's look at what's happening after the Epstein files dropped, because sometimes Hollywood's reactions say more than the documents themselves. Suddenly, celebrities who used to dominate social media are quiet, dead silent. PR teams are working overtime. Image consultants' phones are blowing up at 3 a.m. People who posted 3 times a day? Gone. Poof. Out of sight. And it's not just random. Entertainers tied to managers and agencies named in the files are cutting public ties fast. Pop stars, influencers, rising artists, anyone connected is distancing themselves from executives and companies now linked to the scandal. The ripple effects are spreading through every corner of the entertainment industry. Think back to Ricky Gervais in 2020. He walked into a room full of Hollywood heavyweights and said, "You all have one thing in common. You're terrified of Ronan Farrow." He was talking about the journalist who exposed Harvey Weinstein, the man who pulled the curtain on Hollywood's abuse problem. Well, now it's not just journalists they're afraid of. Now it's 3 million pages of government documents accessible to anyone with an internet connection. And this time, it's not an accuser who can be attacked or discredited. It's the Department of Justice, it's the FBI, it's official letters, official stamps, official everything. You can't spin that into a conspiracy theory. And that's exactly what Katt Williams had been saying all along. He warned that the truth was coming. He said those who hid behind wealth and power wouldn't have anywhere to hide when the receipts surfaced. And guess what? He was right. Here's the big picture, what all of this really adds up to. For decades, Hollywood ran on a culture of silence. Certain names weren't spoken, certain trips weren't questioned, certain parties off limits. The price of fame, money, and career opportunities often came with one unspoken rule: keep your mouth shut about things that should never have been kept quiet. But then came the people who refused to be silent. Katt Williams paid a heavy price for speaking out, years of being dismissed, mocked, and written off as unstable. Yet he never stopped. He kept pointing at the system, at the chessboard of power, and warning that the truth was coming. And then there's Ricky Gervais. He walked into one of the most star-studded rooms on earth, looked Hollywood's biggest names in the eye, and said their friend wasn't untouchable, their secrets weren't safe. After that night, he was never invited back to host the Golden Globes again. Fast forward to 2026, 3 million pages of documents are now online, accessible to anyone who wants to read them. The Epstein case was never just about one man. Epstein was a symptom of a system where wealth buys access, access buys silence, and silence protects the guilty. His death in a federal prison cell in 2019 was meant to close the book. The files were supposed to stay buried. The names were supposed to remain hidden, but they didn't. And now, those who spent years calling Katt Williams crazy are quiet. And those who squirmed and groaned when Ricky Gervais dropped that bomb at the Golden Globes, some of them are frantically searching for lawyers. The game has changed, and Hollywood, well, it's never going to be the same. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button and subscribe if you're new, because we go deep on the stories that actually matter. Drop a comment below with your take. What surprised you most about all of this?